Hello, everyone. This is Hossein Mokhtarzadeh, and you watch my program called Strategy. Since the world is changing quite fast these days, we probably need to adjust our strategies in life and/or our career. So I ask experts about their strategies following pandemic. Basically, during the pandemic, we are. It's not just after. It's not just done. So I'm happy to introduce you to Dr. David Heath today from the University of Melbourne. With over a decade of experience in engineering research and project delivery, David has applied his expertise in many complex structural engineering projects. His award-winning work has made substantial contribution to the building and construction industry. He works now at the interface between research and industry, which is quite important these days, where he plans and executes projects bringing cutting-edge research to real life, real-world applications. Welcome, David. Hello.
Hello, nice to be here.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and background. So I think you started with like your PhD in engineering, and now you end up where basically industry and academia meet, right?
Sure. Well, usually I tell people that I've been institutionalized. I've never actually left university.
I
I
see.
started my PhD. That was through an ARC linkage project. And once I finished, I spent about 5 years in an industry association, a brand new industry association that was established to set safety standards and design guidelines for the Australian fastening industry. So structural connections to concrete. And we got an Australian standard, a new Australian standard out of that, a new linkage
Great.
project application, and also contributed a substantial amount to another Australian standard related to precast and tilt-up construction.
Oh, that's amazing. So what was your background? It was in structural engineering?
So I'm a structural engineer by background. I
Right,
did my Bachelor of Civil Engineering originally, and then went straight into a PhD. And the title of my thesis was the performance of residential structures to blast vibrations and environmental loads. So I
Oh,
was
wow.
looking at how houses perform
During
when they're on
blast.
reactive soils close to mines and quarries where
I
we might
see.
extract rock.
I see. Yeah, due to blast effects and
Due to
stuff.
blasting.
Okay, okay.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
blast is also not only there in the military type of things, and there's huge
correct.
applications over there. Yeah, if you have time, we'll get back to that. But how did you end up here?
So yeah, it's a long story. I mean, I really enjoy, like you said earlier, I really enjoy working at the research industry interface, and that's precisely where I'm at. Throughout my entire career, I've worked very closely with industry, and I guess now I'm at the opportunity where I can influence new projects getting up and running. But how that happened, when I finished my PhD, I spent the time working in an industry association for 5 years. I then came back to the University of Melbourne, working in an industrial transformation training centre on prefabricated construction. So again, it was still working in a similar capacity, but that was very much in an operational sense. And after spending 2 years in that position, decided that I wanted to jump onto the pre-award side to work with academics and industry to help secure new research projects. And that's pretty much how I ended up where I am today.
Well, that's amazing. So it's maybe all our life basically can be divided pre and post pandemic, right? These days,
Pretty much,
it's
yes.
pretty much you say, oh, we used to do this and now we're going to do that. So everything is changing, as I said in the beginning. Um, what really has changed for you, like that's kind of highlight of your career?
So I think it's the big change for everyone is well, those fortunate enough to still have a job, it's forced us to rethink how we do our job. We're still, I guess the message is that we're still doing business. We're just doing business a little bit differently. And just like you and I are having this conference via Zoom, as it turns out, we're having pretty much all of our meetings now in a virtual sense rather than having the traditional face-to-face meetings. So that's probably been the biggest change, I think, finding new ways to do business.
So how do you find it? Are you now okay with it, or you're just still adjusting to all these challenges or changes?
Look, I think with colleagues and existing partnerships, those who you've worked with previously, it's actually relatively straightforward because you know them, you've built a rapport, and it's relatively straightforward. But sometimes I think the challenge is when you're trying to foster new relationships with people who you haven't met before. And if technology isn't working as well as it should in the moment, then that can be a little bit challenging. But I think broadly there's greater acceptance now that we can actually broker new partnerships without actually having those, what we once thought were absolutely essential face-to-face meetings.
So have you had, like, since, let's say, I think we are like 3 months or so at home, right? We are working from home pretty much since March,
Yep,
mid-March, right?
correct. Yep.
So it's funny. I was telling who I was talking the other day, and I was like, it was Friday, and we really don't know when it's Friday, when it's, everything is pretty much the same, But anyway, so what do we call it? So have you had any recent success, sort of, to, you said that fostering new collaboration is quite challenging, do you remember any, or do you have you been working on anything new that's really worked?
Well, I guess in my world, there is a fairly long lag between when a grant actually goes in and when you hear about funding. So I probably won't know for another 6 months or so, maybe less, depending on the scheme, how successful they've been. But certainly where you've been able to help build a new relationship and prepare an application and lodge that application, then I think that is definitely a successful outcome.
So
But
maybe
whether
maybe
it's
we can. Sorry to interrupt. Maybe we can actually. Maybe we didn't talk about this one, about your specific role that you have. We talked about, like, your industry, and then maybe people who watch or listen to us don't know exactly how you guys helping, or you specifically helping researchers or industry. Because that would help us understand that how, especially these days, that everyone talks about, oh, we need to develop sustainable industry, especially in Australia, because we're far from pretty much all the countries, and in terms of the supply chain and all the challenges that we are facing in the beginning, all the way that people started buying things, So it seems that we need a lot of changes, right? Or new way of thinking, let's call it. So maybe just tell us about some of the things the roles that you guys play, and then we can talk about the new industries and
sure.
industries.
So I guess my role is providing strategic advice for the preparation of grant applications. So that's in terms of advice to the academics, in terms of, it could be something as simple as how to pivot their research to better meet the needs of industry, or to a prospective industry partner. It could be what are the expectations around this particular grant scheme that the academics and the industry partners are looking to team up to try and target. And having I guess, a very deep understanding of what the funding bodies expect for projects to be, or that are compelling and competitive. I guess that's really the role that I play. And for those new to the schemes, I can really help support them and usher them through that whole process from the original concept development all the way through to submission. Because some of the advice that you provide early on can really influence the process that's followed and ultimately the success.
So how do you see now, especially during this pandemic, the industry relationship? Some of them might be dealing with a lot of challenges, right? So how do you go about that to sort of better connect people, let's say?
Sure. Yeah, look, I mean, it's. I think there's a varied response. There are some that are clearly impacted, and they're in a position where they can't commit to R&D type activities until everything is got under control, certainly from a financial perspective, and the future's a little bit more predictable. I think there are
Predictable.
quite a few uncertainties out there at the moment. We don't know how long the recovery is going to take, and they don't know when they're going to be in a position to team up again to commit funds when they're busy trying to keep as many people employed as possible. So for others who are in the fortunate position of still having funds available, then we can find new ways There are new opportunities that are coming up now with COVID-19. There are new grants with new
Right.
focus areas, and we're starting to see that at the highest level even from the federal government, not only in grants but also in the tertiary education courses that have
Mhm.
been targeted just to try and build growth in jobs and the broader economy as well.
That's actually interesting point, because even within in this period we see exactly the medium that we are talking through, like this Zoom. They're making millions, or probably near
Correct.
billions, right?
Yes.
Not billion, but I think like a couple of $100 million in the last, or Amazon, or these type of. So it seems that the summation of all these things are constant, or not constant, but some players are really making an impact, or they are making a lot of money as well. So how do you see Australian? Like, how can so you're dealing with a lot of industry as well as the academic, So you basically have a good understanding of both sides, Let's talk about like just industry. So if you had your own, let's say, business from that point, so how did you see the higher education, or let's say the academic side of it? Would you still come with the current situation and start establishing any collaboration?
Yeah, look, I mean, the innovation sector, as we're known, is a great place to start if you're looking to find new ways to be agile. And I think um, there's a great opportunity for everyone to learn from COVID-19 that agility is key. Um, what we've done day in, day out for the past decade or longer, um, it may not look exactly the same moving forward. So if something like this does come up, and perhaps we weren't anticipating and this type of event, then we'll be in a position, we'll have a greater agility to pivot our focus to different areas. And we saw that early on when there was a lot of oh, there was a lot of reaching out that the government was trying to do to
Yeah,
industries to see who could
exactly.
pivot their, as an example, manufacturers to pivot their
Yep.
operations uh, to have a different focus. So how
Mhm.
can everyone do that? We saw a lot of challenges around supply chains, a lack of
Mhm.
robustness
That's
in
right.
supply chains. So again, moving forward, there could be smart ways of doing that, and I think the university, being at the leading edge um, of new knowledge development, new IP, they're ideally positioned to work with industry to unlock new potential.
So
So
what is it's amazing. Yeah, we actually see a lot of opportunities. I actually feel it, like we can see that there are lots of opportunities, because when there's a problem, it means that something hasn't happened, right? So something is missing. So
yes,
probably that
correct.
is
We're
even
overdue for a correction.
exactly. So so what it shows us, the especially now that in Australia and New Zealand, that we are somehow, in a better, New Zealand definitely, but us, we're getting closer. If these spikes and all these new cases we can handle, especially here where we are in Victoria. um, so we are in a position that if we have a good direction, if we really have better understanding of what we need and what's maybe the world would need in the near future and even the future, we can plan ahead and be really ahead, right? So is this correct or not really? Other countries are still not in the sense that we want to compete, in the sense that we want to build sustainable industry, and especially industry and academic relationship.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think there are a few phases to consider. First of all, there's dealing with the present and
Sure.
trying to just get through this trough. Then there's the recovery phase. But I think the long term, so far, I don't think there have necessarily been structural changes. I mean, we knew that we had competitive advantages in certain sectors. We were competitive on a global scale from a global perspective. And I don't think that will change in the coming years. So, as an example, in 2014, the government set up the originally 5 but 6 industry growth centres that align with areas that we have competitive advantage in and where we expect high growth to be experienced. And I don't think that's going to change. And I think they present great opportunities for us to pursue, not only in the grant space, but also in industry, to grow industry. And everyone talks about advanced manufacturing. So advanced manufacturing is an area where I think it's reasonably obvious now, where we have tremendous opportunity, and we can actually invest and compete on a global scale.
Right, right. So speaking of advanced manufacturing, and I was reading the other day, um, the minister, I think, industrial, I think they were talking about like, oh, and in medicine we can be one of the leading. We are quite good, we know that, but we still need to do a lot, of course, compared to some countries. And they were saying that, oh, what then if you, when I was reading the Twitter, and because it was a Twitter account, Twitter, and then there was a lot of academic below that trying to write at what we need, all this um, you can actually, so there's a funding. Of course you can't do much without funding, and there's of course opportunities here, right? So how do you see that? How can we find, because in here in Australia that it seems that um, there's not much of a, how can I say it to be tactfully correct as well. So we have cuts in science funding, so we've had it before, all right? So how can we use this current situation to direct some of the funding toward both industry as well as the academia to sort of flourish in the near future? I hope my question was clear.
Yeah, look, I think I understand. Look, I think there are always opportunities. I think we just need to look a little bit harder for them in the current environment. And
Yep.
the funding environment, I mean, in some areas it's being cut, in other areas it's being bolstered. And as an example, I mean, industry always wants industry-ready graduates, and they're not necessarily easy to come by
Right,
all the
right.
time. So if there are investments in particular areas, um, industry grants are a great way where you can actually have highly skilled um, graduates leaving university to more or less seed industry, and they bring their research capabilities, their innovation capabilities with them to industry. So there will be, I think we all expect there will be a lot more funding announcements to come to target particular sectors. And look, grants for research is part of that. It's not just um, fundamental research or basic research, it's also applied research. And so I think rather than the conventional pathway through an undergraduate or postgraduate degree, working closer between academia and industry is another really good way to get the high-level skills out to industry, and essentially having the graduates ready to actually enter into industry rather than going there with a pure academic hat on and then having to try and learn about what industry is, which has been a bit of an issue on occasion in the past.
I think you actually mentioned something very critical at this point. So you know, government also has been trying to do that, and there are like ITTC type of things, like training centers. But again, when you look at those ones, they are, let's say, 10, 20 people, right? But how many graduates you have? Both, let's just talk about engineering or STEM, for instance. There are quite a lot of them, right? So I feel like um, we are not really taking advantage of all we have, both industry and academia, so they're not really talking well to each other. Because I remember when I came back from States, I was talking to some industry and some people from industry, and they were like, when I was telling them somehow we can do this, we can do that, they were like basically telling us, no, we don't need that level of, maybe I did that. That's one of the challenges that we people who have like PhDs, just think like very abstract, and which has nothing to do with industry. And then that language is not there yet as well. So what do you think about this?
Look, I think part of the challenge is that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Sure.
So one particular industry player may want something a little bit different to another. I think we're always keen to partner with industry and work with industry. And one way that we do work, or we start to work with industry, is through the likes of capstone projects.
Yep.
And that's a great opportunity to get to know the industry partner reasonably well. And they also get access to some of our graduates as well.
Yep. Yep.
And it's an opportunity. It's a two-way relationship. And if that goes well, then not only could they potentially have access to students who already have some skills working on their projects, but it could lead to something, hopefully, even greater, a longer term collaboration.
Sure, sure. I think I really would like to continue and ask you a lot of questions, because I think this is a very critical and important area, that we can explore more and more. Um, but I'd like to finish, because it's like around half an hour we're talking.
Sure.
So, is there anything that you wanted to share with us that I haven't asked you?
No, look, I mean, I think the overall message is probably during coronavirus or COVID-19, it's about finding new ways to work. It's about
Yep.
agility. And I think that in all of the work that I do, everyone's working in a different, in a similar focus, but in a different way. And I think that's been the key takeaway. And those who do that the best are the ones who are going to be the most successful. We don't want to end up like the dinosaurs. We need to evolve very quickly.
Exactly, and we will, and this is important, exactly, to keep being positive, and keep going. And that's maybe, but I can ask you a very last question before we finish. So, who would you like to hear more about this type of conversation that we had? You really wanted to sit down and talk to. Do you have anyone in mind that you really wanted to sit down and chat?
Who would I like from the university? Or
From anywhere, like university, industry, any anyone that's, don't worry if not no one comes to your mind, but I mean, if you
it's a matter of drawing the line. I mean, it's always really interesting to see industry's response to this, from the small players all the way through to the large corporates, because they've all been impacted in different ways.
sure.
So it would be interesting to have, and they have different problems that they need to overcome in their space. So I know you're asking for one, but I would probably hope to have someone representing an SME and then someone representing a large corporate. So I could get that contrast between the two, and that might give a bit of a flavour for what the challenges and opportunities are out there now, and what their vision is like for the future. What are they anticipating?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I was hoping you give me a name, and then I might approach them and see if they would be interested to talk about this particular question. But that's fine. If you later on figure out you wanted someone to talk, I'm more than happy to approach them,
Sure.
to see what they are thinking about this, because I believe we should keep talking about these kind of things, in Australia, especially nowadays, because
Yep.
we have a really good opportunity here, and we all feel it. Although some of us are really struggling, we should really not forget this one. Definitely, there are a lot of people struggling, and we do hope that won't suffer more, and it will be positive sign soon for all of them. But anyway, thank you very much, David, and I'd like you again. Thanks again, and everyone who's been watching us. This was an interview on strategy with Dr. David Heath, and I hope you all enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you.